guys, warning, there will only be 2 more. I will be choosing all kinds of them. And then I will be doing the Tournament of Christian, which will also include the Dragon Ball Christian and the MHA one, the one where he has black fire. Just saying. Or I'm gonna go the strongest one than the One for All one, because he's much stronger with the One for All, with the Rainbow One for All, because that's like insanely strong. I don't know which one I'm gonna go for. Probably the black. Probably all the versions of him. It's just I can only use one Dragon Ball Christian because he's kind of the strongest out of all of them either way. So yeah. The MHA one is probably the weakest. I'm never doing a demon. Okay, no, the MHA one isn't the weakest. The Haikyuu one is. I mean, Haikyuu is probably the weakest anime because, well, literally Himawari can beat Hinata with them fighting at full power because it's Himawari. But I'm gonna be doing, as I said, I would be a Hyuga, but I'm lying. I want to be an Uchiha. Except I did this before, but that was a huge mistake because I didn't want to be the one. I just thought of a brand new story of it. So let's get down to business. So we start off with, so let me just talk about all the background details of what my character is. He will be 2 years older than Sasuke, an Uchiha legend. Well, he's going to be a prodigy Uchiha with 3 elements: fire, lightning, and wind. He can use the wind element to any of his advantages. I'll name his jutsu lineup. His first jutsu, fire style, fireball jutsu. Second jutsu, fire style, phoenix flame scarlet claw. Then his lightning jutsus, lightning style, lightning stream, lightning style, lightning palm. Those were his only 2. For wind, wind style, gale palm, wind style, air bullet. Those are his jutsu lineup for now. So let's get started. Oh yeah, I will be naming, if I ever decide I might be giving myself a mangekyo. I already have a mangekyo design in process. I'm not actually going to show you guys because, well, I can't. Because if I was a good YouTuber, I'm pretty sure I'd be pretty much having already like 200,000, like about running on about 1K subs if I actually was a good what if YouTuber. So let's just get started. So we start off with we're gonna start off with Sasuke first entering the academy, and Christian, who's already almost out of the academy. He's already 1 year after. But he actually skipped the academy and immediately went to Geni like Itachi did. He's on the same team as Itachi, actually. He goes, "Oi, Itachi!" So when the teams are announced, it's Itachi, Christian, and Izumi, because I just feel like putting her on the team because I kind of want to. We're going to screw his friend over. Even though him and Itachi are not even the same age, Christian is still much more of a prodigy than Itachi is on this. So, of course, they would have their sensei going on so many missions until Itachi and Christian finally show enough skill and finesse to finally become Chunin. After taking the Chunin exams with them both tying somehow, because, well, no one knows how to, they're already up to the 2 Tomoe Sharingan. So, basically, they are really strong. They're one of in the top 10 strongest Uchiha already, with Itachi and Christian almost running up on the Chunin rank. They're not Chunin yet. They need a couple of months to become Chunin. Then they meet Shisu. No, I'm kidding. That wouldn't happen yet. So going on a mission would mean everything else. Then one day they go on a mission and meet a masked man who would kill Izumi this time, since, well, that guy isn't there. The other one that was best friends with Itachi, that guy ain't there. So he would kill Izumi, and I just realized how Itachi and him wouldn't even have the Sharingan then. Because that was kind of stupid, because Itachi doesn't get the Sharingan until he dies. Christian already has 2 Tomoe, but already has 1 Tomoe, but Itachi doesn't have it yet. So when that masked man kills Izumi, Itachi goes into 1 Tomoe, but the masked man just dips. So after being at the Uchiha base, after being at the Uchiha for a while, Sasuke is going on missions with Shisui, meeting Shisui. The three of them become best of friends. So basically, after Sasuke is born, Christian actually has more of a older brother to Sasuke, since technically Itachi is never around, and Christian barely even goes on missions anymore since he's not really there. He's already a Chunin, and he's gonna become the Anbu soon. So I guess he wants to spend time with his friends. I don't even know why Shisui isn't even a Jonin yet. He should have been a Jonin. Whatever. Great. So basically, after a while of these being friends, they're like, you know what, whatever. So once Sasuke is about 5 or so, like 7 or so, and Itachi is about 13, Christian's about 11, Shisui, I'm gonna guess, is like 15. They say, alright, well, you guys want to train a little? After doing tons of sparring, the one on top is Shisui. They're like, God dang, we still cannot beat you, even if we're at full power. He says, so let me name all the roles for Sharingan. Itachi and Christian are both at 2 Tomoe. Shisui is almost at Mangekyo level. So, one day, Shisui is hanging out. One day Shisui is jumping around, but he's attacked by Danzo's army, by Danzo's Anbu. Christian's like, Shisui. Then Itachi and Christian arrive. Christian says, go Itachi, I'll handle them. He says, wait a minute, hada. Danzo? He says, fire style, fireball jutsu, and blinds them with a fireball, hitting most of them. And he says, we gotta get out of here quickly. So they head back, and with Shisui actually not losing his eye this time, because Itachi and Christian would show up way earlier. He said, so when they're there, Shisui would say, they would head to a little rift side thingy. With Itachi, when Shisui and Christian asked Sasuke who's stronger out of the three of, Sasuke would always say Itachi. They're like, we'll never get it out of him to say one of us. Itachi laughs and says, that's my little brother. So he says, so when Itachi walks Sasuke home, Itachi comes back to the two of them. Shisui pulls out both of his eyes and gives one to each. He says, goodbye, friends. Protect the village that I love so much. And then he dies. He says, so when they put the Mangekyo in, they're both like, Christian's Mangekyo is gonna look like a buzzsaw. It's gonna look like a pure buzzsaw. He says, damn it, Shisui, why? Then, in his other eye, the second Mangekyo comes. So does Itachi's. They say, whatever. Christian yeets out his sword and says, Christian and Itachi are suspected for killing Shisui because, well, because, well, they're the last ones with him, and these two get angry. They're like, are you kidding me? Itachi would kick them out of the house, like beating them up. Fugaku would say, what are you two doing? He says, they both say, we're tired of this stupid clan and these stupid things. And then once they are chosen to Anbu, Danzo orders them to kill the entire Uchiha clan. So then war does not happen between the Leaf and between the Leaf and the Uchiha. So when they do, Christian suggests, before Itachi can even say it, he says, can we spare Sasuke? He says, who? He says, Itachi's little brother, can we spare him? He says, yes, you can. You can spare one Uchiha, and if you choose him, you can. He says, come on, Itachi, let's go. He also asks Itachi one more thing. What are the abilities of your Mangekyo? He says, I don't know. Yeah.
Chris?
sorry for that interruption. So when they do that, basically, Itachi says that his is something to do with black fire and a genjutsu. Christian says, cool. Mine is a genjutsu and slowing down opponents somehow, because when some reason I was testing it out, everything was moving slow, and I was moving fast. And then I also had a blue fire ability. For some reason, whenever I do that, I can generate black fire. Okay, it was black fire, guys. He says, dang it, you have more abilities than me. He says, well, I have Tsukuyomi, plus I have the stop time ability, which is not stopping time, it's kind of like thing. He says, even though this is sad, we have to do it. Christian pulls out his Anbu katana and says, let's go. Then they meet the masked man. He says, wait a minute, Itachi. And he whispers in his ear, that's the guy who killed Izumi. He says, what? Wait, not Izumi. That's not Izumi. Izumi's the other one. Izumi's not on their team. It's that other girl. Not Izumi Uchiha. He says, Christian also, because Christian and Itachi were actually good friends with Izumi. He says, wait, hold on a minute. Does that mean we have to kill Izumi as well? He says, I guess. Christian goes, how can you be so calm about this? We're killing our entire clan for the sake of the Leaf Village, which Danzo is probably wanting. They just say, let's just get over with it. After slaughtering the entire clan, much faster than usual, they start to act mean to Sasuke. They say, you're too weak. Come and kill us when you're ready. So after that, Sasuke would unlock his Sharingan and then run away. While Christian and Itachi would just dip. They'd be like, nah, bro. We ain't staying here because we're technically counted as Rogue Ninja now. So they just dip. Since they're no longer... So then they join the Akatsuki. Now everything in the Naruto story would go normal, except for one thing. Christian still cares for Sasuke. So does Itachi, but like, he's actually being an undercover Leaf spy. He watches over Sasuke every single time. If Sasuke's in deep trouble, like some evil person's trying to steal the Sharingan, he will come in and stop that person. So during the Chunin exams, Christian's watching from the trees. But then he's tracking Naruto and Sasuke's team. He says, what the? Then he sees a figure shooting a big blast of wind. Christian says, I learned this jutsu last time. He jumps in the middle and says, wind style, wind barrier! It's Ashura's barrier wind. Immediately blocking the attack, saying, you alright, Sasuke? He says, you! Christian disappears and slices off Orochimaru's arm, then punches him in the face, then says, Amaterasu! Burning him, then saying, Tsukuyomi! Trapping him into the Tsukuyomi. Then he runs away and hides behind a tree to get some rest because he used 2 Mangekyo abilities. He says, Sasuke, who was that? He says, that was Christian Uchiha, the guy who joined my brother in slaughtering my clan. He says, that guy? He says, he was insanely strong. He took down that guy with no difficulty at all. And he used that weird wind barrier too, Sasuke, huh? When Orochimaru goes to slice again, Christian slices off his neck and says, you're not going. How'd you even get out of this, Tsukuyomi? He says, oh, I'm not Orochimaru. I'm Kabuto. Kabuto transformed into Orochimaru, but he didn't get the Tsukuyomi. Orochimaru actually did. She would say, alright, you're not immortal like Orochimaru technically is. He says, fire style, fireball! Burning up Kabuto, then saying, Amaterasu! Burning him even harder. Saying, he says, I'm not removing those flames. Those can stay on you forever. He says, Sasuke, you're still weak. He rushes at him with a full-force fireball. Chris would say, water style. No, he says, wind style, air bullet. One giant air bullet engulfs Sasuke's limbs, knocking back the entire team. Christian says, you're still too weak, Sasuke. And jumps out. He says, Itachi, I looked over Sasuke. He says, what did you do? He says, Orochimaru is after him. He says, Orochimaru? He says, yeah, Orochimaru is after Sasuke. He says, damn that Orochimaru. Christian says, yeah. I actually had to beat, I put him in the Tsukuyomi, and I used a Matarasu, so I'm pretty drained. I used a Matarasu twice. He says, you're gonna go blind if you do that. He says, that's why we have to find some more Mangekyo. He says, that's why we have to go find Mangekyo Sharingan. It's the eternal Mangekyo, so our eyes don't go blind. He says, but we can't do that yet. We have to go. Let's develop our jutsu. And shouldn't we just... Do you want to abandon the Akatsuki? This is stupid. We're killing innocent people for the life, just so we can revive something that'll probably they're using us for just to end us. So what's the point of helping the Akatsuki? And Pain can't hear any of this because Christian muted his thing. Then he rips out his communicator, crushes it. Then he rips out Itachi's and crushes. He says, "We're going back." He says, "We're being normal shinobi. I'm sick of this cruel world. I know that masked man is just using us for the infinite Tsukuyomi." He says, what? He says, I heard over a conversation with him and Pain, talking about the infinite Tsukuyomi and how he's going to use all of us Akatsuki members to get through on his plans. He says, we have to stop him. This shouldn't be that hard. You want to know why? He says, why? He's only got one Mangekyo Sharingan. We both have two. He says, why do you think he wears that mask? His left side is crushed. I heard that he's called Obito Uchiha, Kakashi Hatake's teammate. He died in the middle of the war. He says, how do you know so much? He says, Ninja book. He says, shouldn't we tell Kakashi about this? He says, Kakashi won't believe us. He'll never believe us telling him about his long-lost teammate being an Akatsuki member. He says, I think it's worth a try. He says, fine. So they would rush to the village in their Anbu outfits, saying, Kakashi. He says, Itachi, pulling out his kunai, ready to attack. And you. They say, we're not here to fight, we're here to talk. He says, there's no talking here with Rogue Ninja. Chidori. He says, lightning blade. Going to rush Christian and say, well, there's no helping it now. Christian activates Mangekyo and dodges, slamming Kakashi on the ground, saying, we only wish to talk. It's important. He says, fine, what? I know Obito Uchiha is still alive. He says, you liar! Fireball jutsu! Christian says, Tsukuyomi. He puts him in the Tsukuyomi. He lies about putting him in Tsukuyomi. He puts him in a Genjutsu showing the conversation that happened. He says, no, this can't be true. He even showed the mask. Who's under the mask? He says, no. He says, now do you believe us? He says, yes, I do. He goes to Lord Hokage. He goes to the third Hokage. They walk in. He says, Lord Third, we have some news. Terrible news. He says, what? We need to train all the people in the Leaf Village. Insanely strong. He says, why? The Akatsuki is trying to pull off the infinite Tsukuyomi. He says, what the heck is the infinite Tsukuyomi? He says, the infinite Tsukuyomi is an ultimate Genju that puts every single person that looks at the moon is put in a Genjutsu for long into a dream world of what they always wanted. But here's the thing, they'll probably take over the entire world, and if we ever get out of it, which we probably won't. So we have to stop the Akatsuki before that happens. He says, have you two left? He says, after I heard that conversation, I left. And they're also gathering tail beasts, so we must protect Naruto at all costs. And also, we have to find a way to tell Sasuke that it was done by Danzo, or should we just Or should we train Sasuke enough so then he can kill Danzo himself? He says, why would we need to kill Danzo? He says, because Sasuke's obvious. It's either Sasuke's gonna want to destroy the Leaf Village and leave the village to maybe go to Orochimaru, or we just let him kill Danzo and everything's fine. He says, I think we should have to go with the Danzo one. He is very evil. Christian says, I'll wipe him out. Itachi, you train him. I'll take out Danzo's forces. Christian says, fire style, fireball jutsu! A giant fireball explodes Danzo's base. He says, what the? He says, remember me? He says, wind style, air bullet! He says, shadow clone jutsu! Creating 300 shadow clones to rush the Anbu members, killing them all. But then he runs into a kid named Sai. He says, who are you? He says, I will protect Lord Danzo. He says, good job, kid. But here's the problem. Tsukuyomi. He puts him into a genjutsu. Going, what? What the? He's all frightened by the Tsukuyomi. Then he says, get out of my way, kid. And kicks Sai to the side, knocking him out, saying, whatever. Then walking into Danzo's room, saying, if it isn't Lord Danzo. Disappearing and punching him in the stomach, both hands. Then slamming his head into the ground and saying, you're too weak, Danzo. You're way too weak. What's wrong? What's wrong? Then he grabs Danzo by the throat, holds him up in the air, and says, die! And slams him down. But Danzo miraculously survives with Izanagi. He says, wind style, air bullet! He says, wind style, wind vacuum wave. Christian says, Susanoo! A black Susanoo ribcage blocks the hit, and he just swings his hand, backhanding Danzo, killing him right there and then. But then Danzo uses Izanagi. After a while of playing cat and mouse, I'm kidding, yeah, Christian finally gets Danzo bound to really low in his life. Then he says, I think I know who should do this. Teleportation jutsu! And seal, he says, first, before doing the teleport, he says, shadow clone jutsu. He says, seal! He says, light string formation, seal! And seals him, paralyzing him. He says, teleportation jutsu. He says, Sasuke, come with me. He says, you, he says, grabbing him and saying, kill him. He says, what? He's the one who ordered us to kill the clan. So end him, Sasuke. Do it. Fireball him. He says, fire style, fireball jutsu. Christian would hold Danzo's neck, saying, come on, Sasuke. When Sasuke shoots it, it incinerates Danzo, but he's not dead yet. Christian would say, Amaterasu! Burning his head off. And he says, now, Sasuke, watch and learn. Wind style, Gale Paul! Boom! Obliterating Danzo right there and then, saying, that's it for him. Walking out of the base, bloodied, he says, Itachi, we've done it. He says, what? But then Christian says, what's going on in my eyes? He says, I can't see anything. He says, no, you've gone blind. He says, hold on a minute. Danzo's not fully incinerated, and I saw something on his arms. He says, what? He says, I saw so many Sharingan, and there was one in his right eye. But then Christian's vision pops back for a tiny bit. He puts enough chakra in his eyes to see for a while. To see for about an hour. He walks in and says, we have to get these Sharingan into my eyes before I go blind. They grab 2 Sharingan and implanted in his eyes, giving him the eternal Mangekyo and no blindness. He says, whew. He says, Itachi, I think we should train Sasuke for a couple of years, then we should give him the Mangekyo. Then we can give him the Sharingan. And he says, I think I want to take that Naruto kid too. He says, why that? Sasuke says, what? Why that look? And Christian says, pointing his sword at his neck, saying, don't call your own teammate a loser. He's the guy who basically, if he was dead, the whole Leaf Village would be doomed. He's the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, so if he dies, the Nine-Tails comes out and destroys our village again. And puts the sword back and says, let's go. he goes and grabs Naruto and says, Naruto. He says, you're the evil guy that Sasuke told us about. He says, wait a minute. I am not evil. Me and Itachi want to train you and Sasuke. And he says, you know what? We'll get that pink-haired girl as well. We'll train all three of you for about 3 years. He says, but we're in the middle of the Chunin exams. He says, we'll train you for a month and then you will take your Chunin exams. He says, okay. Christian would say, alright, you guys try, all three of you come at me. They all rush at him. He dodges all their hits with gut punches, knocking them all out, saying, he says, get up. Heals them all with medical ninjutsu because somehow he knows it. He heals them and they get right back up. And they say, whoa, I feel better. He says, now come at me. They rush at him and he snaps his fingers. Crows start rushing at him. They go, and he says, now rush me. I'll let you get a free shot. When they go to attack him, he poofs into birds. They go, yeah, 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 yeah. And he goes, ah. He says, alright, come on, harder. He says, I'll teach you all brand new techniques. If you guys can land 10 hits on me, Itachi, count. So, then Sasuke says, Sharingan! Naruto says, ha! Go into his Kibitashi mode. Sakura goes into her no pupil mode. She goes, they all rush at him and he's like, dang, you guys are good. Naruto lands the first hit on, and it's a face punch. Christian would just skid a little bit, and then he says, Itachi, what's that? That's one. He says, right. Sasuke would land a kick to the face. Christian wouldn't budge though. He says, that's two. He says, come on guys, harder. Sakura would go for a punch. It hits, but he doesn't really go that far back. He said, kicking her back, saying, get back all of you. He says, good. I've never seen a team like you. You guys could be the next team. You guys could probably be the next Sanin if you keep on trying this hard. They say, really? He says, well, let me just name who you guys would probably be. Naruto would probably be Jiraiya. Sasuke would probably be Orochimaru. And Sakura would probably be Tsunade. He says, well, why would you have guessed that? And he says, probably because, well, Sasuke pretty much looks like he'd probably become evil out of all three of them. Not even joking. Itachi says, yeah, Sasuke, you do look like you would turn evil. He says, well, that's a little insulting. And he goes, sorry. He says, well, whatever, let's get back into it. So after them landing about 10 hits, he says, good, you've all done it. So I'll teach you all new jutsu. Sakura, come here. I'll teach you the first jutsu since this one's really easy to learn. He says, focus chakra into your fists. She goes, ha! And he says, punch the ground. She punches the ground, exploding a big piece, but not as much as she would in Shippuden. He says, that's good. Now, let's train that for a while. Focus your chakra control and strength. He gives her a training regimen to keep that physical strength, so then she can actually use that monster strength. He says, alright, Sasuke, your turn. Look at this. He says, ha! Chidori! He says, I actually learned this from Kakashi. So, we make the hand signs. He shows Sasuke the hand signs, and then Sasuke would not do it first. He'd just create a little lightning spark in his hand. He says, alright, we're making progress, and we're making progress. He says, we've been trained by all three Sanin except for Orochimaru, because I want to kill Orochimaru. I've been trained by Tsunade, tiny bit, when we were on our journey. He says, well, so after a while, Sasuke would finally get to use 3 Chidoris a day. He says, you can use 3 a day. I can use 10 a day. He says, how can you use 10? I have such good chakra control that I can use them so frequently, uniquely. He says, now you, Naruto, I have the perfect jutsu for you. Since you're a Jiraiya, here's a jutsu that he knows that the 4th Hokage developed. He says, Rasengan! He pulls out a Rasengan. He says, Rasengan! And rams it into a tree, exploding the tree. He says, yours won't be this big, because I've been using the Rasengan for 3 years. He says, somehow I found it in the scroll ceiling after Lord Hokage trusts me and Itachi enough. He let us learn jutsus from there. He says, well, the Hokage must be nice to you too. He says, it's because we are good shinobi. And it's because we care about the village more than our clans. He says, what? Sasuke says, what? He says, it's true. Yeah. I'll be right back. Back to the what if. Ooh, 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 ooh. Christian would say, here goes nothing. Well, I guess this is fun. He dodged most of Sasuke, so he'd say, Naruto, now I want you to pop this ball. He pops it in a day. He says, good. He says, Sasuke, he says, Naruto, try now rubber ball. Try and explode it. After 2 days, Naruto finally explodes it. He says, good. Now the third step. You have to keep the chakra in the ball. He says, watch. The ball explodes for him, and he says, and then look, Rasengan. He says, cool, he says. Also, I know this jutsu. He pulls out a flying Raijin Kunai and sticks it into the ground. He says, Naruto, he teleports to Leaf Village, and then teleports back over here. He says, what the? He says, I use teleportation jutsu and flying Raijin jutsu. He says, you're awesome. He says, I'm probably gonna, he says, Itachi, would you ever want to become Hokage? He says, Christian says, he says, if the third Hokage ever retires, then I will. He says, I kind of want to be Hokage too. Naruto says, don't leave me out. I want to be the Hokage as well. He says, I'm sure you can, Naruto. With your talent and skill, you could probably do that. He says, you could probably do a lot of things. All three of you as a team could probably be the strongest. Basically, they would teach Naruto. So after about 2 weeks, Naruto would finally learn the Rasengan. He'd finally master. Well, he wouldn't master it, but he'd know it. After the last day of training, he says, Sakura, I'll teach you one more thing. Christian goes and fishes in a lake and kills the fish. They say, what? Why would you kill the fish? He says, here, I want you to try and heal it. He says, focus your chakra into your hands and turn it into healing energy. After the entire day, Sakura can heal at least the fish back to normal. He says, geez, you guys are a prodigy team. So when he does that, he says, whew, I guess it's time for the tuning exams, you guys. The first match would be Naruto versus Neji. Neji would defeat Naruto. Naruto would defeat Neji with little difficulty at all. With his Rasengan jutsu and his taijutsu training and ninjutsu training, he would absolutely destroy him. Next match, Sakura would have actually passed her round, and she would be facing Temari. So the next round, Sakura versus Temari. Person tells Sakura, alright, she uses long-range jutsu. I have a way for you to defeat her. What you're going to want to do is break her fan. She says, what? He says, break a hole in her fan. That's her main source of jutsu, is her fan. He says, so break it. He says, okay, I will. He says, good. So Sakura put tons of chakra in her fist and break the fan. She goes, oh, and he says, my teacher told me to do that, because that's the way to beat you. And then she says, ja, knocking out Temari with one hit. Kakashi says, how did you teach these guys? Kakashi says, what did you do? He says, Itachi helped a lot. Itachi counted score. I told them if they could land 10 hits on me, I'd teach them all new jutsu. He says, what? New jutsu? What'd you teach them? I taught Sakura how to use monster strength, which I don't use because it's not that good for me, because, well, I'm a close long range and mid-range fighter. So it's not really useful for me. He says, well, I guess I could do that. And he says, what did you teach Naruto and Sasuke? He says, I taught Sasuke the Chidori. He says, you taught him what? He says, yeah, I taught Sasuke the Chidori and Naruto the Rasengan. He says, Kakashi says, when did you learn that? He says, Kakashi, Rasengan. He says, see, I learned Rasengan. He says, oh, Sasuke's match is up. He says, sorry you didn't get to train with him that much. He says, it's okay. Also, I developed Sasuke Sharingan up to 2 Tomoe. Up to almost 3 Tomoe. And guess what I taught Naruto? He says, Naruto, show him. He goes, ah! Going into his one-tailed state. Everyone is all scared up there when he shows it up in the stands. They say, oh no, he says, Christian says, calm down everyone, calm down, he's not gonna attack. I have taught him to master this form. He can now do it with on will. He says, they go, phew, and he says, continue watching. He says, well, Kakashi, he's mastered the one-tailed form. So if anything gets out of, and he learned a new jutsu with that, he says, what is it? He says, it's called the Vermilion Rasengan. He says, cool, what does it do? It's a purple Rasengan infused with 9 tails chakra. So that's basically it for what I've taught them. I also have I haven't taught Sasuke any new jutsu. I also taught Naruto 2 jutsus. I taught him the wind style Gale Palm and the wind style Air Bullet. He says, why did you teach Naruto 2 jutsus and Sasuke and Sakura only 1? He says, 1, I taught Sakura 2 jutsus, and 2, I taught Sasuke 2 jutsus. He says, what did you teach Sakura? He says, I taught her medical ninjutsu. And he says, what did you teach Sasuke? I said, I taught him the Phoenix Flames, the Fire Style Phoenix Flame Scarlet Claw. He says, what's that? It's where you throw shurikens and add Fire Style to them. He says, Itachi knows that one. He says, well, enough talking, let's watch the match. The match would start off with Sasuke saying, Fire Style Phoenix Flame Scarlet Claw! Cutting right through Gaara's sand. Then he says, Christian tells Sasuke to do it. Sasuke puts lightning style in his shuriken and throws them. And then he throws them. But then it goes right through Gaara's sand, and then he says, now Sasuke, do it. Sasuke would pull back the shuriken with a ninja wire. He says, pulling them back. He says, good. He's like, spot on. He says, what did you do? He said, I taught him for a month. He says, so after a while, after Sasuke would body Gaara would go insane. He'd be like, ah! He'd be going Super Saiyan 3 out here. Gaara would be going, ah! But then Gaara would just run out of the Leaf Village. He'd be like, bye, boys. Yay! And just try and transform him to Shakaku. Person's like, ah, shoot. We gotta go get him. He said, but then tons of sand ninja attack. He's like, what the frick is going on here? Sasuke would say, Chidori, getting all the ones coming at him. Itachi would say, Fire Style Fireball Jutsu, blasting out everyone. Christian would say, Fire Style Phoenix Flame Scarlet Claw, wrecking, defeating more. And then he says, Kakashi, you got this. Go, you and Itachi go. I'll help Sasuke defeat Gaara. He blitzes over with Sasuke, finding Gaara instantly, and he says, so, you're the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Gaara says, get away from me. Christian would say, oh, that's too bad. Appearing in Gaara's psyche, saying, so, you're the one-tailed beast, huh? He says, Tsukuyomi, putting him into a Genjutsu. And then he says, Amaterasu! Burning Shukaku until he starts screaming. He says, ow! He says, stop torturing this kid. Then he pulls out a sword and says, Infernal Jumping Flame Control! And he slices a black fire at him, cutting Shukaku, saying, then jumping right towards him and says, Chidori! If you leave this kid alone, I will not destroy you right now. If you leave him alone, everything will be fine. He says, I'll never stop torturing him. I'll never forgive humans for what they did to us. He says, alright then, my guy. Chidori! Electrocuting Shukaku, saying goodbye. He says, alright then. Then he says, Gaara, you can stop. But then Gaara attacks him. He dodges all of his hits and says, well, looks like we got a feisty one. He says, Rasengan! Ramming it into Gaara, knocking him straight out, saying, this is the power of the Uchiha! He says, nah. But then Gaara would transform into Shukaku. Person would say, oh, that's it, we gonna have a battle on our hands, huh? Person would say, ah! He says, Itachi, join with me! He says, Itachi would go, Susanoo! It's two Susanos. One's red, one's black. One's orange and one's black. He goes, person would say, wow! His Susanoo weapon is a sword, is two swords. He says, da-na-na, cutting through both. Cutting Shukaku. Then he says, Itachi! Itachi would punch it in the face. Then Krishna would say, hey, also I have an arrow! Shooting an inferno-style arrow, burning it. He says, hey Sasuke, this is how real Uchihas fight! Drop dead! And he says, Itachi, you too, he says, Yaneska beads! And he says, flame arrow! Shooting right at it. And then Krishna would grab Naruto and put him on his hand. He says, Naruto, do it! He says, ah! He says, you too, Sasuke! Sasuke would go, Chidori! Naruto would say, Rasengan! Putting them together, saying, ah! Sasuke actually awakening his 3 Tomoe in the process. Going, ah! Chidori! They'd say, Rasen Chidori! Defeating Gaara once and for all. But they wouldn't kill him. Krishna would say, alright, let's leave him alive, because if we kill him, then the One Tails will be released. So just leave him. They'd walk away. They'd all be known as heroes of the life. But then, they realized, oh no, the third Hokage! Krishna would say, teleportation jutsu! Getting in there saying, I will protect the third Hokage! With my life! He says, Tsukuyomi! Putting him in, then he says, he's in a genjutsu. Then the Sound 4 rush at me, says, oh please! Stabbing Sakon and spitting a sword inside of him, saying, then he says, lightning style, Chidori blade! Cutting right through Sakon, killing him right there, then says, drops his sword right back in, saying, boom! Knocking One Punch Man Sasuke. One Punch Manning Jirobo, saying, Chidori! Killing through the entire Sound 4, saying, you're too weak. You're way too weak, buddy. You're way too weak. Saying, whatever. So then he'd jump up in the air and say, Chi. Then he'd kick Orochimaru out of the barrier, teleporting him back to his own base, and slamming him against the wall, saying, you're not allowed to enter the Leaf Village again. And then, they're known, the third Hokage would actually miraculously survive. Person would say, I have a feeling Naruto and Sasuke are pulling too much ahead of Sakura, so why don't we train her a little bit more? He says, why don't we just find Tsunade? He says, because I actually trained under Tsunade, and that was not that hard. He says, so, after a month of training them even more, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura are all promoted to Chunin. He says, good job, guys, you finally became Chunin. So he trained Sakura a lot into medical ninjutsu, where she finally masters it in a month. She's finally mastered medical ninjutsu, and Sasuke has gone up to 3 Tomoe. Naruto has mastered his 4-tailed cloak already. Naruto has mastered 4-tailed cloak, and then he says, we have to give Sasuke something. We have to give Sasuke something. Like, he needs it. Like, Naruto's pulling far ahead. He says, we need to teach Sasuke a new jutsu, or give him the Mangekyo Sharingan. Christian says, I don't think I'm ready to give him the Mangekyo yet. Because that'll pull him way too far ahead. We want their team to be even enough. So then they can in case they're trying to do a combo attack and Sasuke punches it too hard, or Naruto kills the opponent in the middle of their combo attack. So we gotta get them all on an even level. They're like, They finally figure out, why don't we get Sakura the 100 healings mark? We get Naruto Sage Mode, the Jiraiya Toad Sage Mode, and Sasuke the Mangekyo Sharingan. Christian says, I have my plan out. He says, Shadow Clone Jutsu, and creates 2 Shadow Clones. One takes Naruto to Mount Miyaboku, the other one teaches Sakura the 100 healings mark. And Christian says, Itachi, we have to do this. You know that, right? He says, what? He says, yes. They take Sasuke to the forest, and they put him into the Tsukuyomi Genjutsu. He says, ah! Forcing him and scaring him, showing him the death of the Uchiha over and over again. Until he finally doesn't unlock. They say, I guess it's too early. I guess we should take him on that training journey then. He says, why would you do that to me? He says, this is how you unlock. The Mangekyo Sharingan is made up of rage, but I guess you're not old enough to get the Mangekyo. You're only 13, Sasuke. He says, let's go train you guys then. For 3 years, non-stop training. They're already at their Shippuden. Naruto has mastered Sage Mode. And without even Sage Mode, he's stronger than KCM 2 Naruto. In Sage Mode, he's as strong as almost 6 paths. Okay, maybe I'm putting the power too high. In Naruto's Sage Mode, he's about the strength of Biju Sage Mode. Sasuke, finally unlocking his Mangekyo. Sakura getting the 100 healings mark. He says, we have trained you well. He says, look at this. You guys are the greatest team. Oh yeah, I forgot to name the design for Christian and Itachi's Eternal Mangekyo. Itachi just looks like Sasuke's because, well, it makes more sense. And Christian's, goddamn, I don't even know what that would look like. I'm gonna say his is a spiral, his Eternal Mangekyo. His like the Uzumaki logo, but it's not. It's like much more spirally. He says, good. He says, all of you have done really well. He says, I'm proud of you all. Of all your training that has came through. So, let's go test you guys against Kakashi. He says, how about all 3 of us against all 3 of you? He says, that'd be a pretty good matchup. So he says, Kakashi, we've trained them well, and I'm pretty sure you won't even be able to beat them. He says, okay, let's see. He says, we'll be joining you, though, because we know that it's going to be really hard. Christian would say, ah! He'd say, Mangekyo Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. So would Itachi would go into his Eternal Mangekyo. Kakashi would say, Mangekyo Sharingan. Pull out his Mangekyo. Christian says, oh, you have Mangekyo as well. Cool. So, let's go. Naruto would say, Sage Mode. Sasuke would say, Mangekyo Sharingan. In both of his eyes. He says, cool, Sasuke unlocked it. He says, yep. It took a lot of apologies, but we finally got it. He says, what do you mean by apologies? You see, we put Sasuke in the Genjutsu to see the Uchiha clan's death like 50 times until he finally unlocked it. He says, why would you do that? Because he says the Mangekyo Sharingan is about death and sadness. When you're sad enough, you'll eventually unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. He says, well, that's not good. He says, dang right it isn't. So Sasuke would basically jump up in the air and say, fire style, fireball, but then he's grabbed in the throat and slammed down. He says, Christian says, we never said start, Sasuke. He goes, start, and he says, you got Sasuke that easily? He says, what do you think we've been doing for the last 3 years? You see, we were never training you, the Shadow Clones were. Why do you think they had to leave every day? They left every day so I could renew the Shadow Clone's chakra. Christian would say, alright guys, come on. Sakura would say, cha, punching the ground. Naruto was he's like, he would say, Sage Mode. He'd say, Rasengan Barrage. Christian would say, alright, I guess they're coming. He says, waving so many hand signs so fast that they can't even see. He says, "Wood-style deep forest emergence!" Everyone is shocked. Itachi and Kakashi are even shocked. They're like, what the? Tons of wood comes at them, and they go, tons of trees, and they all get sent flying back. He says, "Where did you learn that?" He says, "I actually don't know. I just randomly did it. I just started using wood jutsu." He says, "Wood-style laughing Buddha jutsu!" Clapping Naruto, making him stuck. Naruto would say, "Rasengan barrage!" Breaking out, saying, "Guys, I have an idea." He says, "Launch me forward." Sakura would spin Naruto, would grab Naruto's foot and spin him around until yeeting him towards Christian and Itachi, saying, Christian would say, "Good." He would Naruto would go for a Rasengan, Christian would duck all the way under and kick Naruto in the stomach. He says, "Well, that didn't," he says, "Good job, guys," but it wasn't good enough. He dodges out of the way and he blitzes towards Sasuke, punching him in the face. But then Sasuke would dodge and kick him in the face. Christian says, "Good." Sasuke would pull out his sword and say, Raikiri blade. Almost cutting Christian. Christian would dodge and say, "Nope," punching Sasuke in the chin, sending him flying back. Then he says, "Now for you, wood-style deep forest emergence," trapping Sakura for a deep portion of the time. Then he says, "Come on, Naruto and Sasuke, let's go." These two would rush and they'd start clashing kunai, then going, "Yeah, da, 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 boom, boom," clashing their fists, saying, "Rasengan!" Boom, sending them flying back, and then they go. Then he says, "Fire style, fireball jutsu," hitting Sasuke in the face. Christian says, "Hey Itachi, I've read of a combo move that Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha did." He says, "You want to do it?" He says, "What is it?" He whispers in his ear, I create wood style to trap them, then you create fire style. I create even more wood and you amp up your fire. Alright?" He says, "Good." Christian would say, "Wood style, deep forest emergence," trapping them in it. And then he says, "Fire style, fireball jutsu." He says, "Majestic destroyer flame," because he finally learned it. Then he says, Is that all, Itachi?" Creating even more wood. Then Itachi would say, Christian would say, they'd keep on putting more wood and fire onto it until finally Kakashi stops them from doing that. He says, "Stop, you're gonna kill them." He says, "Alright." Christian would say, "Wind style, air bullet," breaking through all that. They see Naruto and Sasuke knocked out. So is Sakura knocked out from the laughing Buddha jutsu, knocking her out. Actually, from the deep forest emergence, holding her down. Saying, he says, "That combo attack of yours really got rid of that." He says, "We need to use that on more villains." He says, "Well, we did it." They take them to the Leaf Hospital. Well, not because they're hurt. Krishna would say, "Shadow clone jutsu," creating 2 shadow clones to heal them, going, they say, "What happened?" He says, "Me and Itachi kind of went overboard." They say, "What did you do?" "You see, I covered you guys in wood deep force emergence, then he did the majestic destroyer flame, then I amped up the wood, and then he amped up the fire, and we did that about 5 times until you guys finally we're all knocked out from that attack." He says, "Well, you all did good. I see how much you've improved, but it's not enough." He says, "That masked man could easily defeat you guys." He says, "What?" He says, "That masked man is too strong. We need another way to defeat him." He says, "Even me and Itachi can't do it. He's too powerful." And I heard, "Oh no. Wait, I have my Itachi, do you still have your communicator?" He says, "Yes." He puts it in his ears. He hears him saying, "I will obtain the Rinnegan." He immediately hears him saying, "I will obtain." He says, he hears 3 voices. One of them says, "I will attack the Leaf Village." The other saying, the Akatsuki are playing a full-out raid on the Leaf Village to hunt down the 9 tails, because they've caught every other tail, even the 8 tails this time. B's dead. Sorry, guys. Christian says, "Oh no, we're screwed. We have to train so hard. I mean so hard." He says, we're heading to Turtle Island now, Naruto. Itachi, you're giving Sasuke the Eternal. Sakura, you're coming with me. She says, what? He grabs them and says, we're going. He says, what's going on? He says, you're going to control the Nine Tails' power, and I'm going to train you so much that your monster strength could probably destroy the earth with one single punch. He says, we're going. He says, why are you so angry? He says, don't talk through this entire ride. We're going now. He teleports to the Hidden Cloud Village. He says, Lord Raikage. He heads to the Raikage office and says, bow, you idiots. They both bow, and he says, what are you doing here, Leaf Shinobi? We have a bad thing going on. I'm sure you've heard the news that Lord B has died. He says, what? B has died? He says, you haven't heard it? He says, Lord B has died to the Akatsuki. He says, who are these Akatsuki? They're rogue ninja from each village who are insanely strong. I was once one of them, but I left the Akatsuki after I heard their plan to steal all the tailed beasts. He says, we need to use Turtle Island for a little bit. He says, what do you need it for? He says, this is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. We want him to try and control his Nine Tails, because they're planning to do an attack raid on the Leaf. And we also need your guys' help to stop them, if you want to avenge B. He says, yes, I will join. I'll contact the other villages, because I'm pretty sure all the other villages had something. He contacts the Sand Village, the Mist Village, the Stone Village, and that's it. He says that we need to stop the Akatsuki. He says, the Tsuchikage says that one of his ninja, Deidara, has gone rogue. Gaara says Sasori, the puppeteer, has left his village, along the Hidden Leaf Village say that Itachi and Christian have left, but they also came back, so they're good. Mei says that the Hidden Mist has the Hoshigaki, Kisame Hoshigaki, that left. And they say, wait a minute, there's also the Hidden Leaf has one more Akatsuki member that's still there. He says, who? He says, Obito Uchiha. He says, we have to stop him, and there's only one way we can. He says, what? I have to learn the reanimation jutsu. He says, why? I have to bring back the person that he liked the most, that he loved the most. Rin Nohara. Nuhara. If I bring her back, he will stop this madness, or we're gonna have to kill him. He says, the Raikage says, he needs to die. He says, if you can kill him, then do it. I'm going to Turtle Island. He teleports to Turtle Island and says, Naruto, first you have to fight your inner self and accept it. Naruto would do that, and finally he would accept himself. Then they hid inside the Tail Beast lair, and then Christian would come into Naruto's psyche somehow and help him control the Nine Tails. He'd say, every single time Naruto go to an attack, Christian would say, Wood Style Deep Force Emergence, trapping the Nine Tails. Then after a while, Naruto would finally defeat the Nine Tails with a combined Wood Style and Rasengan Emergence, which is just Christian trapping the Nine Tails in Deep Force Emergence and Naruto doing a barrage of Rasengans, and then a Rasen Shuriken to finish it. But Naruto would meet Kushina and all that crap. He says, Mom, I haven't met you yet. He says, but then Minato would appear there. Minato would appear there as well with him. He says, thank God you haven't reached the 8th tail. Christian would also meet them, because he also went into the psyche. Because somehow he went in. He says, who's this? He says, this is my teacher, Christian Uchiha. He says, yo. He says, what have you trained him in? He says, I taught him the Rasengan, like, right? Taught him Sage Mode, Wind Style Airbolt, Wind Style Gale Palm, Summoning Jutsu. He says, I've taught him tons of techniques. Your son is very adaptable to all kinds of techniques. They say, well, thank you. He says, no problem. He says, we have to get into an all-out battle. He says, wait a minute. Where are your guys' bodies? He says, why? He says, we're going to need Minato's and your help, Kushina. We're going to need Minato's help. And if you want to be revived and you want to be with Naruto and real, I could reanimate you guys and try and find a way to Rinne Rebirth you guys. He says, Rinne Rebirth? He says, I can try and do that. He says, but I need the Rinnegan to rebirth you too. And it's going to involve you two taking out your own eyes. They say, Kushina is disgusted at the first part of her taking out her own eyes. He says, if you want to be your son again, that's what you're going to have to do. But we don't even have the Rinnegan in possession. We have to defeat Pain and take out their Rinnegan, because they have about 8 Rinnegan. He says, how can someone have that many Rinnegan? It's Nagato. He has been the one controlling them. So we have to get this before the raid starts. So we have to go. Christian would say, reanimation jutsu. He says, Naruto, I got a big surprise. He says, huh? Reanimation jutsu. Bringing back Minato and Kushina. Naruto would say, Mom, Dad. Sakura would say, who are those two? He says, this is Lord 4th Minato Namikaze, aka Naruto's father, and this is Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's mother. She says, it's nice to meet you guys, he says, and who are you? He says, are you Naruto's girlfriend? And he said, Kushina would whisper in his ear, don't say that. She goes, oh. She'd say, no, I am not his girlfriend. I'd rather be with Sasuke. Christian would say, simp. And she would say, what was that? And he says, let's just go get Sasuke. I have a surprise for him, too. He says, you guys stay here on Turtle Island to catch up with each other. Christian would teleport to Sasuke, grab Sasuke's arm, and teleport back to the Uchiha thing. He says, what are we doing here? He says, get the bodies of your parents. He says, what? He says, get them. He says, okay. He got them and he says, reanimation. Reanimating them. Reanimating Mikito Uchiha, Shisui Uchiha, and reanimating Mikito Uchiha, Shisui Uchiha, and Fugaku Uchiha, saying, these are Sasuke's and Itachi's. He says, hello, Fugaku and Mikito and Shisui. He says, yo, it's you, Christian. He says, hey, Shisui. He says, what did you do? He says, reanimation jutsu. I'm going to find a way to get the Rinnegan so I can rebirth you guys into real life. So so all of us can have a happy life again. He says, thank you. You don't know how much this means. He says, it's okay. And I mean for you, Fugaku. You better not do one thing against the Leaf, because we have a humongous problem. He says, what? He says, we have a problem between the entire Leaf Village. Actually, it's a threat to the world. He says, what is it? The Akatsuki. The thing that me and Itachi joined, but then we left. They're planning to destroy the entire world. And you know what, guys? That is the end for part 1 of Photo Remastered the movie. Well, I will be finishing up the story probably tomorrow.